welcome everyone to tonight's meeting, and thank you for being here. I know especially in the summertime it's hard to get out, but we're appreciative of everyone being here. A couple of things, housekeeping kinds of things. Timeline, which I have actually as number 3. We're going to move that up and do that next. Ed and I met with Dr. Crawford Tuesday. And Dr. Crawford, for those of you that don't know, the school district just went through an audit, which was brought in by the New York State Comptroller's office. And one of the recommendations from the audit was that, and concerns from the auditor's office, was that we did not have a long-range plan. And so what they told the auditor was that yes, we are working on doing a long-range plan, told them about this committee, but our timeline has kind of been moved up a little bit. So we're looking to accelerate to being able to bring a first report to the Board of Education by about October 1st. So and I think we're in the right place now. I think we've gathered a lot of the information, and I think we're ready to move ahead, and I think we should be in a really good spot with that. So that just kind of gives you an update about the timeline and what we're looking for. And of course, we'll have additional reports and recommendations that will go, but we're looking at that initial recommendation piece to be going about October 1st. Okay? Okay, so with that said, Brian Graham has been working on some additional information regarding building numbers and enrollment numbers. One of the things, again, that the audit was able to show, something that we've already as a committee realized and discussed, was that we are having enrollment, our numbers are dropping. And we've already looked at that from Brian's first report, and now he has some additional graphs and so forth to show us. So we're going to move it on over to Brian, and then what we're going to really kind of focus on basically is 2 questions. So I want you to kind of keep this in the back of your mind as we're looking at where we go from here. What does the data show, and what direction does it lead us as we begin our reconfiguration discussion? So what does the data show, and what direction does it lead us? Okay? All right,
Great.
Brian?
Well, good evening, everybody. I do want to thank all of you for being here. You know, it's July 10th, right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. My son is doing a soccer tryout right now at the Western New York Flash Academy in Alma. And he was on the team this year, and he's doing, he's trying out again right now. And he's also missing a lacrosse game. So that tells you how busy our family is, and I can only imagine how busy your family is too. So I just wanted to thank all of you for volunteering and being here, summer night, which is absolutely beautiful outside. And I also just want to give kudos to all of you who worked all day, or worked with your children, or whatever you were doing, and you've made it here tonight to be with us. Tonight I am going to take us through enrollment again. We did do this once before, and as Lisa said, I'm going to do it in a different way with a little bit more visual aspect to enrollment, because I think, as Lisa said, it's time to accelerate our thinking and really begin thinking about how we can restructure and reorganize the school district. So as I get set up, I want to pass this book around. This is a book that Charles Lehman had kept near and dear to his heart. It's a book of enrollment, and he passed this on to me in a very wonderful way, and it's just interesting to pass this on. You can see it's got Post-it notes, and it's relatively it has some history to it, and you'll find ditto papers in here. Remember ditto papers? So you'll find that. So as I pass this around, I don't encourage you to look at every page, but just flip through it. Start from the back of the book, and flip 2 pages to the front of the book. And this is our history of enrollment in the district. And again, before I get into the slides, I also want to just show this visual here. We at the end of June we had we were 97 students less than how we started the school year with respect to new kindergarten registrants. So what I mean to say is that we had 492 kindergartners this school year who are in our buildings, but at the end of June we were shy 97 new registrants. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we're really trying to promote kindergarten registration. So you're going to see these signs on the front of our elementary buildings out along the roads, just reminding new registrants, new people that are moving into the district to register for kindergarten. Isn't that pretty? Double
Very
sided.
nice.
Very nice. Very good. So you'll see those out and about within the next, by next week, I would say. I'm going to pass out the slides that you're going to see today. A lot of paper here. So take a packet, and you can keep that. And I'm just going to encourage you to stay with me. Try not to peek ahead if you could.
The world's worst people.
Only one tree was harmed in the making of it.
Okay.
Big tree.
Is that right?
Steal another one.
You know what, Brian, if we could just, real quick too, we have a new member to our committee, and I was gonna do that in the welcome part. Scott Firkins, who's gonna be joining us from the tech department. Many of you know that, or maybe you don't, Stephen Yee has taken a new job, and he and his family are moving out to San Francisco. So he is leaving the district. So we wanted to make sure that we had the technology department represented. So Scott has so kindly agreed to join us. So we thank you for that and welcome you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Scott. Oh, we appreciate you being here. So, as we start to look at the slides in the packet that you have, the first one we're starting off with is just historical district enrollment from 2000 to 2014. Does anything jump out at anybody?
Looks like a slide.
Yeah.
A little bit of a roller coaster,
Giant
a
slide.
little bit of a slide. So obviously, as you can tell, 7,724 students back in the year 2000, and here we are with 6,709 students at the end of June of this year. This is the next page, and this is current enrollment from 2000 to 2014 with projections out to 2019. So as we see the trend of enrollment going down the past 14 years, actually for a very long time, the projected decrease continues to show the trend in the decrease of enrollment. So this is my projection from 2014 to 2019, going from right now 6,709 students down to 6,300 students. Okay, so the trend has not really stopped. The decrease is upon us.
Right?
Yep.
The last part from 18 to 19 seems a lot more drastic. Is there a...
In my opinion, we don't have a grade level K and up that's over 500 students. So a few months ago when I did this presentation, I was talking about the kindergarten enrollments. And in the district right now, this past year was the biggest bubble we've had ever, 492 students district-wide in kindergarten. But if you look at our first graders and our second graders and our third graders and our fourth graders and our fifth graders, it's all below 500, and it ranges from 470 to 460. So the average is somewhere around 470-ish for every grade level. And a good way maybe to visualize this is if we had 492 and 470 and 469 and we call this kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, and they're all below 500, and we lift them up and we move them forward and we drop them into 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th grade, and we just do the math. Anybody have a calculator? Can anybody quickly do 472 times 13 grade levels? Because the answer is 6,100 or 6,200. So that's where the drastic change becomes. If we don't get an influx of enrollment in the next 5 years, those kids just keep going up each grade level. And when we look at K to 13, it's going to be.
So the ones that are going out are higher than striving?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. So we're now on to the third page of your packet. This is an interesting slide. Obviously it shows that from 1980, and you'll see this later. I actually will. There's a slide in your packet that shows you Allendale's enrollment since the 1970s. Okay, so we'll look at that later. But right now, when you look at it for the last 14 years, it's been pretty steady, right? 552. Of course, we've moved the 6th graders to West Middle, and that's why there's a dip in Allendale's enrollment. So right now, the building capacity is 403 in Allendale, okay? But what's important for all of us to realize is that the average enrollment at Allendale from 1980 to 2000 was 620. So just quickly, just feedback from the group. What does this slide tell us?
We're down 200 kids.
Yeah, we could fit 200 more students in that building. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Yeah, and that's basically the big aha, right? That building has plenty of capacity, plenty of space to have more children. Here's Clinton's enrollment. You can see that the average enrollment at Clinton Street from 1981 to 2000 has been 702 kids. Does that surprise anybody? It's a really big number. Like I said, later on in this packet, I will show you all of those years. Okay, so right now we're just looking at it from 2000 to 2014. And as you can see, 611 was very common, and now it had dipped, but by adding East Elementary students to that building, it went back up to 577. Okay, so by closing East Elementary, Clinton's enrollment got closer to the average, I guess, that's on this slide, but not anywhere as close to the average over the long period of time.
Right, if you're going through every building, I just want to back up and mention that Allendale, 2000, since then there's been a 4-room addition put on it.
Oh, good.
Good point.
So-
What addition was put there?
4-room addition.
Four-room
on the-
addition?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's very important too, right? So even though the average enrollment was 620 from 1980 to 2000, you're saying that there's even more capacity.
They could hold like 700 students.
They could hold a lot of kids. Okay. So there you go, Allendale and Clinton. And I just because I'm taking us through the history of the district. East Elementary is here. Obviously, that building has closed, and those kids have been dispersed to Clinton Street and East Middle School. But that's the enrollment history of East Elementary. West Elementary. Just take a minute, look at this slide, and then tell me what you see.
Again, they had the capacity of doing almost another 200 children.
Yeah. We, by moving the 6th graders off to the West Middle, this building has consistently, averaged, somewhere as high as 800 students. And by moving the 6th graders out, there is room in this building for more students.
And the offices have always been here?
The district offices have been here for a while, Joe. Do you have any idea? Probably since the building opened?
They've been here since before the school came.
Okay, when it was the education center?
Yeah, when it was kindergarten, and then it was kindergarten, first grade,
Right.
the offices were
Very good. Good, okay. Here is Northwood slide. Just take a minute and look at the Northwood slide and tell me what you see. And we're going to call on somebody whose name isn't Lisa.
equalizing.
I'm surprised to see that much of a drop with losing East Elementary. I would have expected it to go up because you're absorbing a lot of those kids.
Right, and so a lot of the kids went to Clinton
They
for
lost
East Elementary.
sixth grade too.
And they lost sixth grade and fifth
Oh,
grade.
and fifth, yeah.
And fifth grade, right?
2 grades.
So there is room, a lot of room at Northwood. I think now I'm gonna pick on Lisa, because her husband was the principal there, about how many students.
He was there back in 2000.
Okay.
So, yeah,
So-
he had about 630, 640.
K to 6.
K to
about
6,
640.
yep.
Yeah. So we can see that there's plenty of room here if we needed to put children in that building. Okay. Here's Potter Road Elementary School. Again, take a look at the slide and tell me what you see. Allie Quinn is here.
I actually started in 2000.
Okay.
Oh,
That's when I
wow.
started,
That's interesting then, yeah.
and there were 600 kids there. I can tell the difference every year if there's, more and more empty space there.
Right. And what's interesting is this number. Again, looking back over time, the building capacity was even higher than 606. So to see the building at 335, now this number does not include universal pre-kindergarten. And Holly, you have
I have 120 right now.
120 of those back. So,
Brian, do we know the
Yeah.
class sizes were?
yeah, you know what, that book could help us because it breaks down by, the only trouble is that I don't think it tells us how many teachers.
Hope we didn't lose the
It
book.
breaks it down by building and how many were in each grade, but it doesn't tell us how many teachers were in the classrooms. But that, I'm sure we can find that research.
I'm just curious,
How many kids per class?
Yeah.
because I think about when I was in school, the class sizes were much larger.
Oh, yeah.
Right,
Well, now they're like they are
right, sure.
now, but then we went through.
Yeah, but even when you look at the difference between here and here, and we go back to here, or we go back to Holly, the class sizes, were they remarkably different, or about what they are now?
For a few years, we had like a dip where it went down, we had smaller class sizes. But when I first got there, they were, middle to the top end of the board guidelines.
Yeah, so in the last 14 years, your building at 600 had nice class sizes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's good to know. Here's Winchester's enrollment. And I started at Winchester in 2002, so I remember when it was 377 students, and now we're at 287. But what was fascinating to me, looking back through that book, was to see that Winchester averaged 500 students from 1980 to the year 2000. So that was kind of a surprise for me. Diane, do you have anything to add to that? Or?
No, those streets in there were very populated. Like, I'm sure many of our friends, that are our age, went to Winchester. It was a very much different. Now it's a lot of older families. When I first moved into that area, we were one of the few families on our street that new families moving in. It's just an older neighborhood now, so it doesn't surprise me at all.
Any other comments about this slide?
You know what else is interesting is about, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago, they did a shift in the attendance zone.
Right.
Between Potters and
Oh,
Winchester.
yeah,
And
good point.
and a bunch of the Potter Road streets went to Winchester, and we lost about 70 kids from Potter Road. So that 335 includes those kids that came in from Potter Road, or it would be only.
Yeah, so
over
this 287 includes what used to be children that went to Potter Road Elementary School. Yeah, that's a really good point.
So that would bring
About
it down.
6 years ago, right? 6 or 7. Yeah. I know, you've been there.
Didn't we redistrict about
15
Probably, and some of the slides will actually show us how frequently this district has changed. And we're gonna go through some of that, but I don't know, when the last
Actually, I think it
full-blown-
was almost 16 years ago, because I was working in special ed.
It was.
I did
My
do that
kids
redistricting.
were still in school. My older kids were still in school when they,
Yes,
and
it's
that's when they
always
cut those lines by east and west, and
Okay.
those kids started going to west
Right.
instead of east.
Got it.
Right.
Good to know. All right, anything else on the Winchester slide?
It was probably 95,
Okay.
maybe 98, maybe 98.
Yeah, 98.
98.
Okay. So here's East Middle School. As you can see by taking, closing East Elementary School and adding 5th and 6th grade to that campus, obviously the enrollment spiked this year.
Do we know what the capacity
That's
is?
what I was gonna ask. We're on the same page. What do we think the capacity is of that building now that they're merged?
Right, great question. So I don't know if Joe can jump in on that. I can tell you that in future slides, when we just look at East Junior, they had over 1,000 kids. Yeah. So I don't know if East Junior included East Elementary. I don't think it did. But I believe that East Elementary was separate from East Junior.
It was.
They were
Still
definitely
all the same
separate.
campus,
Yeah.
But all the same campus. But I guess what you're going to be surprised about in future slides was how many children were in our buildings that were open in the 80s and 70s. So it's really, really remarkable. Okay, I'm going to move on. Pat. Hi, Joan. How are you? Thanks for coming. Here is West Middle. We see literally the same kind of jump by adding just 6th grade. This year, West Middle was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at 940. When I go back to East Middle, remember this is 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade at 927. So, West Middle has a lot of kids with only 3 grade levels there. And in future slides, you're going to see what happens to West Middle in 5 years. And it's really remarkable, the change and the downwardness of the enrollment for those schools. Here's East Senior. You're going to see later on that East Senior at some points had more students in the building than West Senior, going back in time. But right now we're looking at 892. And again, in future slides, you're going to see East Senior's enrollment will be going up. The children coming out of East Middle, there's a big bubble of kids, and those kids will, be at there, for 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. So we're going to see East Senior's bubble go up a little bit, which is a little unusual because everything else is trending downward. But we'll take a look at that in a moment. We had ALC as a building, and of course ALC is closed. It obviously served a wonderful purpose for 45 to 50 children every year. And I'm happy to report to you that there were many graduates at East Senior and West Senior who were in this ALC building last year and now are in our high schools and they graduated. It's very, very exciting. So the children that were serviced at Ebenezer at the ALC are being serviced in the buildings, and we had many kids make it to graduation this year on both sides of town. So I just wanted to show you that we're looking at, this package you have looks at every building that existed in the West Seneca Central School District since 1966.
Do you have the sheet on West Senior?
Yeah. If it's not in there, I'll make sure you get it. Yeah.
The Berlin is what right now?
13, it's about 1,300.
About 1370, I think.
Yeah. And there's some future pages that'll have that for you. So this is a very busy slide. So I'm going to stop talking for a minute and let you digest this a little bit, and then just get your feedback on it. Professional teaching, this is called pause time. Just waiting for you guys just to digest it and share some comments.
So the only one that's going up is Clinton?
Clinton went up because we closed East Elementary.
We need to start making more babies.
Anything else?
They're fairly consistent across the board.
Tell me what you mean.
The drops all seem to be relatively the same. The patterns are dropping for Allendale, Allendale and Northwood are almost identical.
Yeah.
If I'm reading this correctly. And Potters is following the same path. Also Winchester. The only differentiating building is Clinton, and that's due to the additional kids.
Yep. Good.
And it appears that with West Elementary, even though it's dropped, it's still very close to what it was in 2000. You know, it hasn't dropped as much, even though you moved, what, 6th grade out here,
Yeah.
right?
Had a big jump.
Somebody else? Bob?
Now, East Elementary took a huge drop, and that merged with who now?
Clinton.
Clinton. And that didn't go up as much. Is that because they lost a grade also?
And the other children went to East Middle School, and they're not in this slide. So, so the children at East Elementary who were, I guess, in 4th grade at the time, went to East Middle as 5th graders. So they're not represented in the slide. And then the other children went to Clinton Street.
Brian, do you expect any of these numbers will go up?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of room.
Right. I think we'll start to see that there's room in other buildings for kids, and that's an important concept for sure.
You could fit all of Winchester in a whole, not that I want to see that, yeah.
No,
You could.
say it again, Diane.
You could fit all of Winchester in a whole nother building.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Well, in the early 80s, or late 80s, I should say, they moved the kindergartners out of Winchester. and
Yeah,
put them in
Northwood.
Northwood.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And my daughter was involved in that, so even back then we were doing it.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Bob?
But we have 6 elementary schools funneling into 2 middle schools.
Right.
That in itself is amazing.
And there are over 2,000 of those kids. So that's good. That's another interesting point. There are 2,260, elementary students that will always be funneling into 2 middle schools right now. So about 1,000 in each, right?
And the 2 middle schools are okay at that number?
It's tight, but wait to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to go
They're
down.
going down. Good. This is good feedback. Let's keep going. This is the elementary enrollment. Now, of course, this chart is skewed a little bit because we took 6th grades out of the west side, and we took 5th and 6th grade out of the east side. So the number is a dramatic drop, right? But it's a big drop. It's a drop of 1,300 students. So there is, we're servicing, 2,627 students in 6 buildings. We were servicing them in 7 buildings over here. Okay. So there's definitely still room, to make some changes in the district that will help us help us improve our fiscal, fiscalness, I guess you could say. Yeah, Bob?
So if we're at a little over 2,600 elementary students, what would be the, in the real theoretical, what would be the optimum number at each elementary school to handle this?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. If we go back to, Potters, Northwood, we can see that comfortably the buildings held 600 students each, right? And West Elementary comfortably had 800 students. So I guess if we took if this building had 800 students and other buildings had 600 students, I guess the question would be, how many buildings would we need? 800 plus 600 plus 600 plus 600. We would be close to that number, that 2,600 number. So we probably could reduce, by that many buildings. So that's, I think, just digest that a minute. We'll go through some more slides, and we'll see where we end up. So again, this is that that elementary enrollment slide. And here's high school. High school, even though this slide looks like it's a tremendous drop, it's 2,500 students, here to 2,200 students. So it's definitely a decline. It's not as dramatic maybe as the slide makes it out to be, from 2,500 to 2,200. But it's definitely, there's a trend, starting to show that it's declining. And this is combined East Senior and West Senior.
What happened between 2005 and 2007?
Sometimes those are bubbles, bubbles of kids. Joe, I don't know if you have any comment on that, if you recall those classes being really, big that year. Yeah.
I think 'cause it was a one-year thing, and
Yeah.
it didn't really stand out as any kind of trend.
Right.
Maybe we had, it's really cold winters. People spend a lot of time in there. Can that be censored out?
Good call, Joe.
Mr. Dennis, why would you say that? Nice try. I'm watching you.
I'm going to push a little bit for some critical thinking on this slide. Just take a look at the history of our middle school enrollment, and after closing East Elementary and moving 5th and 6th grade out of some buildings, what does this represent with respect to the healthiness or the health of our middle schools? And this is a tricky, question. I guess I'm going to just throw it out there. What I see is that the middle schools, had room and we're now fully maximizing our resources in the middle schools. We're servicing more students in 2 buildings, and more students are getting the benefits of all of those resources. So, as we start thinking about how do we restructure, reorganize the school district, I think that that's an important piece. What happens when we take and concentrate services in buildings and we maximize the use of those buildings? How does it help us with our human resources, the resources for students, the curricular resources, the pupil personnel service resources, all concentrated in a setting? And I think that this represents, we've had a very successful year in our middle schools with this kind of dramatic change. Very successful. And I'm here to tell you that after this number, it starts to go down again. Even as successful as we were at this peak, when you see what's going to happen in the next few slides, we're going to start to decrease again in the middle schools. So I just wanted to throw that out there. When I look at the slide, I'm thinking closing East Elementary was successful at Clinton Street, was successful here at the middle schools. Yep.
Both middle schools are grades the same?
No. One has 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, and one has 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
Which is no 5th or no 6th?
West.
No 5th.
West is just 6th.
West is just 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
But I have to say,
Yep.
I feel like a little of this is deceiving, because even though they were successful years, you still had, West was at its capacity. You had foreign language on a cart, teachers that didn't have.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's an important point.
Yep.
Which if enrollment goes down, then maybe there'll be room for teachers to have a class back. But
Maybe.
I mean, you don't want to see that either. But we
Right.
we have to keep that when we're making these decisions. I think that's an important
Sure.
point.
That doesn't change the success of students.
We need people who have that.
But, and it doesn't change the success,
Capacity being able to
accommodate, but it doesn't change the success of students.
Right. Oh, I disagree.
Right. So,
It was a great year
right.
for the middle school.
So a teacher on a cart still taught Spanish, and children still learn Spanish and achieve
They
Spanish.
did, right.
They did, but I think that we have to remember that there's a culture to languages.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily get that in a classroom on a cart. So
Yeah,
I'm just
but
throwing
it's
that
also-
out there too.
But it's also important, because you and I were not there, the partnership that the teacher has with the teacher that they're sharing the classroom with is also very important with respect to that culture. So if you have a great partnership, that culture can definitely evolve and grow and be successful.
I think one of the other things that's important to remember and focus on too is we've talked a lot about what we value
Yes.
in this community, and what, as we were making all of our lists and we were talking and having conversation, there were certain things that we kept coming back to that were the silver bullet moments for us. We heard a lot about the fine arts, we heard a lot about athletics, we heard, those kinds of things that were really important to us. And I think as we're looking at the possibility of some reconfiguration, would that save some of those programs? I don't know, but I think that's something, can we make it successful?
Right.
Are we able to be successful? Are our kids able to be successful? Is staff still able to do what they need to do? And are we able to have what we value? It's that tightrope walking, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Joan?
Brian, when do you think that the enrollment will start to go down in middle school?
Now.
The next slide. And thank you, Joan, for that wonderful segue. But Rob, you got something?
I just wanted to make the comment, situations where we have a teacher with a cart, is that languages kind of thing?
Foreign language this year.
Foreign
At the
language?
middle school, I
That
think.
sends a subtle message, it's not as important.
It's not just, it's not that it's just that. That might be
Right.
that particular situation. It depends on the building, it depends
Some
on the
it's art on
enrollment.
the card.
We have social studies teachers at the high school on a card.
Right, right.
Well, it just depends on how many classes are offered at that time and how many rooms you have.
Yeah. Dan?
I understand everybody's need to have a home office to work in. This cart thing, for 25 years, I've had a big cart was my office with 4 wheels on it, and it moves with me wherever I go.
We didn't care.
I know, you didn't really buy us real good ones back when we got married. Prove that. We had some horses then, we got rid of that. We had some subtle improvements, but thank you, Joan. I guess, just personally, I'm not as sensitive to that. I mean, they have brain, will move. That's just how I am. Kids need a comfortable learning area. Being a state instructor myself, I've always been displaced, and you set up shop and show your mettle on what you're doing.
Yeah.
I think kids would rather learn out in the park than in the classroom anyway. Stuff like
You're,
that.
you're talking to not to slight anybody or any particular thing, you're talking to a minority of people.
Right.
that do that.
And I would say to you,
Teachers who have to do it. I mean, there's a lot of equipment that you can't use when you're on a cart, especially when you're going from, I'm teaching this class, and right after that, I'm teaching a completely different grade, completely different class, and I have to fit all my materials for one day on this little cart. It's very difficult.
Which sounds to me like a management issue.
Well, I mean, I don't
To
think
work
it's
with
just
your management to get
It's
you.
also, it's just very hard, and, I mean, I teach music, but when I have to go into somebody else's classroom where they have desks and tables and chairs, I can't do what I do in my own classroom where I have a big, wide open space. And
I'm
so
not going
it
to
does-
disagree. It's
No,
better to
no.
have your own. I'm not going to disagree with that. I'm all for that. But
and East
to
Middle,
save,
East Middle right now, we have 927 kids, and we have music and languages in their own classrooms, which actually tells us we have more room in those buildings.
But if we had enrollment that you're saying we've lost over 6,000 students in the past 14 years, right?
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
So if we've lost all those students, the square footage has increased, and you're telling me there's no classrooms? So
Well, first, I
something,
just
I'm
want to
not
clarify, it
understanding.
wasn't 6,000 in 14 years. We were at 7,700, and now we're at 6,700, so it's 1,000. But at one point in this district, we had 15,000
Right,
students.
right. And that's what I'm kind of going to, because at that time, we didn't have all these additions on these buildings, and we had a heck of a lot more kids in schools. And then Joe and I were at those high schools that were at the capacity of
But
one.
I think,
What
you know,
have
I-
both.
But I think class
Is it-
sizes were a lot bigger.
The difference is, I mean, I just, probably the easiest example I think of the high school gym at West Senior. When I was a student there, we had 3 grades, you had over 2,000 kids there. There were no fire codes. So you put the whole building in that gym, the walls were shaking. Now, you've got fire codes, you have to have railings on bleachers and things. I think about also walking in between classes when I was there. You literally, you couldn't move. Now there's differences that way. The classrooms, the way that they're set up now. We had more desks back when we were students there. Now, because of the materials that are used in the classes, there isn't the same amount of room. So I think I don't think it's drastically different, but in a classroom, anyone's ever been in a classroom, the difference of 5 or 6 more kids is astronomical. So, I think part of why we could fit years ago where we can't now is just what's actually done in the classroom and the materials that are used and.
Yeah, kids sat at a desk when we were in school.
Yeah.
We sat at a desk, and that's how you learn.
Yeah,
The
now
style of
it's-
teaching has changed.
Yeah, so that I see as something, I mean, I even look at my room
The
system.
locker sizes have changed as well. They
Yeah.
wiped down all the small lockers that we had, which you couldn't fit anything in.
Well, they still
And now
have
a lot of
those
lockers.
now.
You didn't carry books to class. I didn't carry books to class.
Yeah, we carried everything to classes. There was everything.
Yeah, so I even think, for example, since they put the Promethean board in the computers in my classroom, you could probably have fit 10 more desks in my room before that.
Right.
Now, and you talked about being on a cart. 10 years ago, being on a cart wasn't that much of an issue. Now, you have to log in, computers, everything else, you have to link up to your Promethean board. The Promethean board, the way that they're set up now, you can't have the desks in the same kinds of rows that we were in before. You have to have a table that has a printer and the computers on it, so that takes away amount of square footage. So just the technology alone, I would estimate, I'll just use my classroom, has cut 10 desks out that you could fit before. So,
Well, that's good to know.
yeah, so I would say that.
Sure, Debbie?
The number of classes that are being offered, when I look at what my oldest son had available, and he graduated in '95, my youngest son graduated in 2011. My youngest son had so many more options for classes that were never available to my oldest son. So we just added a lot of opportunities for our students. It takes a lot of space
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah. And I know there's going to be a committee, Ann Botticelli's going to work with a committee to look at electives and to see which are, which should we continue to promote and which are a little excessive. So that's definitely something that our assistant superintendent curriculum will be looking at with, a committee. So that's a good point there. So I'm just
I guess
going
we looked at, having taught since that time, I don't think, I don't have any data, but just from having been in the buildings, I don't think that there were less offerings then as much as it is now. Our offerings are, you have things that are academies or that are more structured, whereas before, if I'll use social studies for example. We had a law class, we had a business type class, we had these different classes that were just electives. Those are all gone now. So now the electives are, we offer Syracuse University credits, we offer AP classes. So there's, yeah, it's different. I don't think it's less or
There's
more.
also different scheduling now
Yeah.
than you had then.
Yeah, so now the classes are more tracked towards college or academies or whatever else along those lines.
Short classes.
So I guess I'm just saying, I think we have streamlined a lot.
Yeah,
In
I'm sure.
those-
I'm sure there's been some streamlining. All right, so Joan had asked, when do we see the decline in the middle schools? And here's what happened. So this year at West Middle, you're not going to see a major decline, somewhere around 930 kids. But in 5 years, they will be down 131 students. And that is an entire team of students. I'm not saying that the numbers will magically fall within one team, but across the building, that's a big drop in enrollment in 5 years. So, and Joan, that goes back to Joe's question earlier, how do I know that? It's just that we know the numbers in our younger grades, and they're just moving up. So all I'm doing is taking those kids, moving them up a grade level, and then just doing the math.
And that's if no one goes
So how many
outside
next year will
district.
you be down?
For just at middle school, it's a small drop at West Middle and a little bit bigger drop at East Middle. So here's what East Middle looks like.
It's a big job.
So, any feedback on this slide?
We need to get more students.
This is with 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade in that building. So this is a real issue, right? And if we take those two middle schools and look at them, combine them, right? We're seeing a drop of 302 students in 5 years, at the middle school.
Are you anticipating moving the 5th grade to the West Middle School? Because that's not really taken into consideration yet.
No, it's definitely not. So here's the question, and this is going to involve, Matt Bystra and Andy Playich and the teachers at West Middle, and Joe Barr, actually. Is there capacity to add 5th grade at West Middle in 5 years? I'm not sure. We've already talked about teachers in a cart, right? So that's already happening. Are there enough classrooms to add 5th grade students? Right now, I don't think so, right? We couldn't do it this year for sure. And I would say we probably couldn't do it the next year, but maybe we could.
Unless you redistrict.
Right. Go ahead. No, Diane.
Well, it's the same, unless you redistrict and move some of those, filter some of those kids over the east side.
Right.
Right.
So that may be then opening up the opportunity to take both middle schools and have them equal. And there's a lot to be said for that equity. It's great for the teachers, it's great for the students, but it is making some hard decisions and moving West Side kids to the East Side. Absolutely. Bob?
Would then carry that equalization carry to the senior highs?
Yes, but it would take some time, but absolutely. So depending, if let's just throw it on the table, if we closed an elementary school and those children, or if we didn't close them, and those children we just said, you guys are going to the east, right? Depending on which building it was and how many kids we moved, it definitely could equalize high school and middle school enrollment on both sides of town.
Brian, have they looked at how many more subdivisions could be built in?
Yeah, I think there's a few. Somebody rattled them off to me the other day. Somebody helped me out. I think, is there something on, is there a Fisher?
Fisher Road.
Well, Fisher Court.
Fisher Court.
Right, Fisher Court, that's, yeah.
The problem with these subdivisions, my opinion, I do a lot of in-house work, and I'm not seeing new parents. I'm seeing, even my street, I'm having older people leave, houses are going up for sale. My neighbors are going into their 30s, they're not having kids.
Right.
I might have 3 kids on my entire block right now, whereas when I was a kid, I had 12, 15. People that are even building in these houses aren't necessarily coming in with 5 kids.
Well, that's another issue that we have to look at is I think that's another issue. What is our town doing?
Yeah,
a whole other issue, but
Princeton Estates is all kids.
A lot of them though, in the past few years, quite a few kids have left Potter Road and gone to West Elementary because they moved from the small houses in my
Yeah,
zone
to
to the
those
brand new
older
houses
right.
in Princeton Court.
Mhm.
So they're not new kids in
Right.
the district,
That's-
they're just,
that's a good point.
they're my kids
Just
that are
coming
moving
here.
to bigger houses and now they're going to West
Yeah.
Elm.
Right.
And
A
it's
lot of
been
West
happening
Side.
within Westell. They're moving from an older neighborhood
Yeah.
into Princeton Estates and building a new home there. So they're not moving schools, but they're moving.
We had a few families at Winchester that are now going to Clinton, or
right.
yeah.
So, but what's true is that we have an older population in West Seneca that are still in their homes without any children in those homes. And as they start to sell those homes, hopefully they'll sell them to, families with children, right?
It happens.
It absolutely does.
When
Yeah.
I grew up in Williamsville, when I went to when I was going in middle school, they had to close my middle school I was going to because there wasn't enough kids. There was 3 middle schools at the time, and they closed Casey Middle, and they left just 2 middle schools. By the time I was done with middle school, and our middle schools then were 6th, 7th, and 8th. By the time I was done with middle school, they had to reopen Casey, and then they built Transit Middle, and of course now they're booming. But I mean, it can shift,
Yeah.
but it also depends on the area and what is in that town and what,
Yeah. So really what it
There's
comes
a lot
down to
that
is
goes into it.
if this commission makes a recommendation to the board to close a building or 2, you know, the thought process would be, do we mothball a building and keep it so that, you know, you have it if you get that spike in enrollment down the road, right? So those are some of the conversations that this committee should have, and then be ready to make recommendations to the board, because that's a really good point.
Well, that's what this building was.
Right. It
This
was,
building was the third room, so.
right, it was Allen,
And
yeah.
Ebenezer now is repurposed, right? Now we're using it as like a central emergency command.
Yeah, there's one classroom for John Gallo.
We have all of our big computer
Right, right.
stuff there.
Yep.
That was fascinating to
Yeah,
see all of the.
Right, all the data.
The guts
for-
there.
Yeah, Scott's department. All right, so let me just.
Bob had a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Not so much a question, but an observation from my business. We're not having the larger families. To move into the higher valued homes, both parents are working. Our property tax structure is, has a dramatic impact on people coming into West Seneca. What we truly need more of is businesses without kids.
That's great.
We truly need, and I get asked a lot of times, why are taxes so high in West Seneca? And my response is, it's not because we have inefficient school and town government. It's because Hamburg and Orchard Park and Cheektowaga have the big commercial locations, and they all skipped over West Seneca. And those are huge income producing for the town.
Right. So that's a great point. Joan, you got a solution?
Right
I don't know if we want that.
Actually, I mean, there's already development areas,
No,
you know,
yeah.
like the one, off the 400 there is down, you know, off Union Road. I mean, people just don't come in because the taxes are high. Even
And there's
for
not a lot of
businesses.
room for development anymore.
Right.
You know,
Well,
where
we
those
got-
subdivisions
we
are
got-
coming in.
Not houses though, we don't want any more houses built, we
Right,
want,
we
we
want
want
businesses.
businesses.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, there's not a lot of development, and what there is so expensive that people don't want to touch it.
Well, we're gonna get the stadium at Seneca.
So
Falls.
we're.
They'll do it.
When I started real
Yeah, I
estate
love
25 years ago, people would say, oh, I'd love to live in Orchard Park, but the taxes are too high, I'll settle in West Seneca. Now it's the other way around.
Taxes are low.
Dennis does the same thing.
You know, you talk, the street that I was on, Fisher Court,
No.
I bet you there's 5 houses that they're single people.
Single?
Just been sold. In
Well,
the
the
last-
interest rates are very attractive to young single people. They can buy a home on their own.
We're selling a lot to see.
Right.
That's quite
Right.
And
attractive.
women.
Right.
Yeah.
There's 5 houses that I know that have been sold and they're all single people.
Yes, that's fascinating.
Okay.
Well, somebody asked about West Senior.
That's quite the data.
So here's a slide that shows, you know, where West Senior is 1,324 at the end of this year. And it does slowly begin to decline. And in 5 years, we think, I believe, they'll be down 100 students, 109 students.
Can't you project out farther with this too?
It's hard to project that far, especially at the high school.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think, going back to my original comment, if we look at 470 multiplied by 13, that'll give you an idea of what the future looks like. This is East Senior. I shared with you that there's a bubble of kids coming out of East Middle right now. So this is the one slide where you're going to see, you know, from 896 to 945, and then, you know, those slowly start to dip back to 848. So in 5 years, the prediction is they'll be down about 48 or 50 kids. And this is the high school enrollment projection over time, combined down 157 students.
Brian, this formula that you're using, you know, just moving everybody along, because I know I had this conversation with Charles many times. Is it based on, like, these predictions in the past were accurate?
This formula's worked before.
Yeah, so in other words, you know, if we look at what Charles did 5 years ago using the same type of formula, was it accurate in figuring out, you know, people that moving in and out and that move within West Seneca and all that. I know it's not a perfect
Was
science.
he ever off by
I
500?
I certainly haven't looked at the way Charles has done it, so I'm not sure how he made his predictions, but this is how I think, right here. And I do this once a month. This is literally every building, every grade level, how many kids, and this is June, so I can look back at, May and April and look at the changes. This tells me a tremendous amount of information. So the way I'm doing is I'm just taking these grade levels from East Middle and moving them to East Senior, in the future. So
I guess
unless there's a huge influx of kids in 8th grade, 7th grade, and 6th grade, we just take them and we put them over here. That's how I'm predicting 4 or 5 years from now.
That's what I'm saying. So this takes into account the number of students that come back sophomore year in high school, or that come back 7th grade, that leave and then come back or move in. So it kind of takes that.
I think so, because
kind of
I think it does, because the enrollment at the high schools, and remember I told you I'm colorblind. These colors represent change in the district from one month to the next, and I don't know which one.
This shade's gray.
One color represents no change from one month to the next. So I do try to keep track of mobility, and so up here in the elementary schools, as it got into June, we had more consistency from May to June. But if I go back to, I don't think I can do it in this spreadsheet, but if I could go back to, say, September or October, we would see these colors intermingled all throughout, because there's fluctuation, sometimes by 1 or 2, and sometimes greater. But the fluctuations aren't as great as you would think.
And they kind of wash
And
each
that's-
other out.
And that was
Yes.
my question.
Yes.
Because being a classroom teacher, there'll be some years where I'll get 6 kids that transfer back in the middle of the year, and
Right.
other years I don't. And I don't
Right.
know if those
And
numbers
how
are
many
pretty.
kids do you lose?
I think
itself.
I think
Yeah.
it does, because, and this is just in a reflection, my daughter just finished 5th grade here at West Elementary, and when she started in kindergarten, there were like 119 kids in that kindergarten class. And moving forward, at the moving up ceremony, Ms. Badger, did this whole thing where the kids stood, how long they've been here. And there was a lot of change. Like, there were a lot of kids who'd only been here a year or 2 years or 3 years, and then there was most of the kids had been here since kindergarten. So they started at 119, lots of change, lots of kids have left, lots of kids have come, and they ended at 123.
So
So
it's
I
pretty
think
flat.
it's like, it must,
It
for the
does.
most part, just wash itself out.
And what's really, really
That's
important
interesting.
as we look at that up and downness, we have a lot of this.
Yeah, more people are leaving than coming.
Right. I'm just saying, like, that, and that, kind of struck me, that fact. I was like, oh, that's kind of neat, because I know, I can name on 2 hands kids I know who left. So.
Brian, now take Princeton Estates, it's still building over there. Do you have any idea, how many kids you pick up and you'll pick up in September?
I don't right now,
You don't?
no. But,
Because they're still building over there.
right, and were you here when I showed this? Were you here for my prop? These will be in front of all the elementary schools next week.
Okay.
And the reason is that in June, we were 97 kids short of where we were in September with our new registrants.
Uh-huh.
So I was a little alarmed by that. So I had these made, and they're going to go out in front of the elementary schools.
Registration is a whole different thing this year, right?
Yeah, but we were 100 kids less than where we were, and it's much easier to register.
It's easier, but how did you register a year ago? Well, like, how were you notified to
Kids from
register?
Princeton Heights come here, right?
Okay, I think, I know a lot of people I know just haven't realized that's how they register.
And that's where those signs will help.
Yeah.
So I guess, Joan, what I want to say is that we're already down. I know Donna told me today, Donna's our central registrar, she's got about 30 kindergartners getting ready to register in July and August, but that'll still have us down by 50 from where we were in September.
Very interesting, there's a lot of houses that are for sale over there because the taxes are so high over there. So if you just ride through, and Bob probably sees that, Princeton Estate has a lot of movement of reselling their house. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So here we go. Again, I think we just talked about this slide with the high schools in 5 years being down about 157 kids. This slide does not represent kindergarten. Okay, so this is just grades 1 to 5 or grades 1 to 4 in our district. And what this actually tells us is that it's kind of plateauing. Okay, our enrollment, because as I shared with you, 470, 460, 490, if you average it all out, it's starting to plateau. My prediction is I don't think we're going to dip significantly, say to 400. I'm not predicting that. I'm predicting that we, in September, will probably have 460 kindergartners. But remember, we had 490 in September. Okay, so my prediction is we'll be somewhere between 460 and 470 this September with kindergartners. That's down 30 kids. But my prediction is that we're going to maintain those 470s, 460s, 480s in the next 5 years. So what I'm trying to say is I don't see this number fluctuating too much in 5 years. Okay?
So if we did make a change, it would get us, at this point, we would be pretty secure in saying,
yes,
in the next 5 years, we wouldn't have to change again. We could make a change and feel pretty confident that in the next 5 years, we would be in good shape.
Yeah, I do agree with you. This is our kindergarten enrollment. As I shared with you in September, we had 492 in the district, and this is kind of what I'm predicting. It could go a little higher, a little lower. It would be great to get back to 492. But again, if you take 492 and you multiply it by 13, it's 6,200, 6,300, somewhere around there. We were at 6,700, right, this year, 6,750. So this number, just keep thinking about this number in grade K, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Because this number, it would be great if it was up here. It'd be awesome. But it's still, even if it was, it's still going to be less. We're going to have less kids, 6,200, 6,300 than 6,700 this year. Does that make sense to you? Okay.
Now, is that based on actual live births
Mhm.
within the district, or families moving in and census information as to whether or not they have kids?
Yeah. Yes. So, as you might imagine, I have a spreadsheet for that. And here it is. So there is a website. Type in Google live births, and there's a registry of births that are attributed to towns. Keep in mind, this yellow line is data coming from that website, the live birth website. And the live birth website, like I said, attributes those births that you see just to West Seneca. But what's missing from that data is the births in Cheektowaga, Blaisdell, Orchard Park, South Buffalo that also come into West Seneca. So this data is missing that information. But what's fascinating about this look is that there were 505 babies attributed to West Seneca in 2003. And, I'm sorry, let's look at this one, 501 in 2004, and we have 477 kids in kindergarten that year. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you look at this line and this line, you see that consistently we are lower than the live births attributed to the town, except for 1 year, which was here. Mm-hmm. And even though this number is higher than the births attributed to West Seneca, it's not above 500. So if you look at these numbers, like I said, you lift them up and you move them forward, I don't see how we're going to get grade levels higher than 500 unless we have an influx of people selling their homes and families moving in, or some major development like the developmental center or something where they plow it down and they make these beautiful, you know, homes, but it's going to take something dramatic, or you know, or just it's going to go slowly.
And that's not going to happen overnight.
No.
Yeah. But there's also no reason to see that happening with taxes, with actual people having babies and all that. I mean,
Yeah. So can any of you notice that I spend too much time doing this? My wife's been texting me all along, keep me up to date on the tryouts today.
Oh, fabulous.
So,
you gotta share the news, or?
no, I did. So this is, I'm going to fly through these slides, but this is what's in that black book that's floating around, starting at 1966 for some of the slides. This one ends at 1985. Did anybody guess why it ended in 1985? We closed Abbott. Did anybody go to Abbott? No? Okay. So we had Abbott. Is it for sale? Nice. Where is it? Oh, right.
They went up and saw it.
Nice. Well, we'll see what happens, right? All right, take a look. Look at Allendale. What jumps out at you here? Yeah. I don't know how. You know, and I don't know if they. Does anybody have any history to this? Allendale at 931 kids. 720.
Well, the 100 kids graduating classes back then were in there at 4, 5, 6, 700
Right.
classes.
Yeah.
That's what most
But
of
how
these
did this
sites-
building hold 720, right?
Oh,
Right?
And that's without those additional 4
That's
classrooms.
9:30.
Is that before the addition also?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
That side's
wow.
Isn't this remarkable? I mean, I just found this fascinating to take a look at. So stay with me. I'm going to roll through this because this is. I know we're glazing over. Do we want to take a break right now, or are we still?
No.
All right. I'm going to roll through this, but the purpose of these slides is to show you what West Seneca has done in response to enrollment. What did West Seneca do in response to enrollment? We closed Abbott. Here's Allendale. Here's the school. Anybody go here?
Never heard of it.
Here we go, Bellwood. Bellwood had 800 students, 750 students, 600 students. Even at a little under 500, they closed it. It's fascinating. It was, wow, 500 kids, and we still closed the school. Oh, were you going to say something?
No, I just haven't finished.
They opened Potter Road in,
Right.
70.
Yeah, I'll get there, I think.
That's probably part of it.
Right. So here's Clinton. Look at Clinton.
At 1,255 kids.
Is this this is amazing to me. I don't know how they do that. 1,200 kids. Right. They were they had hammocks and suspended from the ceiling. Are you ready? Here's East Seneca East Elementary. I don't know what happened in 1968, but something weird happened. Aliens, something bizarre happened there.
Could be something here.
All right,
We
here
open-
we go. You ready? Northwood. Look at Northwood. 1,000 students at Northwood. Holy moly. Whoops. 800 students. And then remember we said it could easily go from 391 to 600? Look at this line. Very, very consistent. Bob Bridenstine was the principal at 637. Look at this line. Easily we can fill that gap. Anybody go to Ebenezer? Yeah, one in the back. Look again. Look at the numbers. 800, 700, 600, and then we close it. Right? Very interesting. Anybody go to Fisher Road School? Okay. This is what's in that black book. West Elementary. West Elementary only opened in 2000, right? So this is the same slide that you saw earlier. All right, here we go. Gardenville. Anybody go to Gardenville? Joan.
Joan was president of the PTA there.
I've come so much.
All right. Where was, help me with, where was Gardenville?
Joan,
There-
right
there-
here.
It was on Union.
You were president of the PTA after Joan.
Right where, almost next door to where Dunn Tire is.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, where it was apartments.
Those
There's
senior
apartments.
apartments.
Sorry,
Tearing that down.
Wow.
I remember being in the parking lot of that building for some reason.
Burned down.
Oh, okay.
Not after.
Right.
I
Good question. All right, here we go. You ready? Look at this. A public school had children in church school. Right? We had a couple hundred kids. Then someone brought it to our attention and we closed it. No, I'm just kidding. Does anybody know where church school was?
It had to be by Indian church somewhere.
I believe.
St. Peter's, right next door.
St. Peter's. Wow, that was church school.
Really?
Nice.
Oh, the rental.
No, nicely done. All right, you ready? Winchester Historical Enrollment. Absorb this for a moment. Wow.
So the brain's on the wall, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
So,
Look at that.
Northwood can hold. Look at poor little Winchester's to come in.
All right. Here we go. Potter Road Historical Enrollment. At one point, 1,000 kids, 830 kids, 654 kids.
The 21st.
Isn't that great? There's a lot of room there, or a lot of change there. Here's East Junior, which is East Middle. And of course now, as East Middle is East Middle and East Elementary all on campus, but
But does that take into account, which you probably don't know, but back in the late 60s, there was 7th, 8th, and 9th in the
it does.
middle
In that book, it actually shows us. I didn't put it in this data, but you're right. It was 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. Absolutely.
6, 7, 8.
thank you.
So, well, at West, it was, I don't know about East, but West was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
And this was 6, 7, 8.
Oh,
So there was a discrepancy even back
even
then.
back then, right.
Yeah.
Ellendale Junior was 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Right. And when I went to East in the 70s, it was 6, 7, 8.
Oh, I
Was
see.
it
I
late
see what you're
70s?
saying.
Yes.
Okay, so
late
the high
70s
school
on the
numbers
west
are a
side,
little bit,
yeah.
during the 80s, are kind of skewed because
Right.
9th grade was at Allendale Junior
Right.
and West Middle.
Right.
Right.
And the 6th grades were, like in all the elementary schools, except for the east side.
Right.
Yeah, good. All right, here we go. Here's West Junior. 1,282 students, 767, and then now back up to 945. All right, here's Allendale Junior High School, 1,400 kids. Amazing. Now, help me, is that this? Where's
Yeah,
this?
this
This
building.
building. This building, wow, 1,400. Amazing. And I guess you'd have to say, if district offices left here, how many more kids could be in this building?
Middle school.
When this was the junior high district offices, were actually across the street, the old Allendale, the old Allendale.
Oh,
On Allendale.
Oh,
Yeah.
Allendale
Yeah.
Road.
Oh.
Allendale Road.
Wow.
That building's no longer in existence.
Right. Okay, you ready? Here is, we had a school called Senior High. Does anybody know, was this East Senior?
No, that was West.
It was West Senior, Senior High was West Senior. So did they change the name?
There was no other.
There was no
high
other high school. It was
East
just
opened
West.
69,
Got it.
Just West Side.
But it was Bellwood. Bellwood was the high school before the school.
So the drop, just so you know, in the book that I circulated around, there was 4 years of data, and then there was no more data attributed to the word senior high. So, so then take a look here though. East Senior High had 2,384 kids at one point. Of course, 1,500 kids and 892 kids. And here's West Senior. And Goodness, I think that's the last one, right? Yep. All right. Whew. All right. So I think that was a lot to digest. But I want to just bring you back to what Lisa wrote on her agenda, which was, what does the data show us, and what direction does it lead us?
Okay, so thank you very much for that information to share with us. That was really, I think, helpful, and I think it's really eye-opening because the data, that's what we keep talking about, that we want to not just do something from the gut, but we actually want to look at the information and see what it's saying. So I'm opening it up to the floor of what does the data show you? What did that show?
We don't need as many buildings as we have.
We don't need as many buildings as we have.
Downside.
Downsize. Rearrange students as to what buildings that they're going to.
So, let me ask you, obviously this data was put in place to show us this. I mean, it's very clear to show the declining enrollment and that there's room in these other buildings. So, going forward, what do we do?
Well, that's what we're talking about as far as the reconfiguration. That's where we, at last meeting, that's where we chose to start today. So as we're talking about reconfiguration, one of the things that we wanted to do was to have the data of where our students are,
right,
so that it gives us a better understanding as to what, does it make sense to reconfigure by closing a building? Does it make sense to reconfigure by changing attendance lines? Does it make, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Like, I know all of that. Like,
Right.
I know what I feel needs to be done. I think you have to redistrict. Of course, there's probably buildings you can close. But who does that? Like that?
Well, what we're gonna do,
Us.
Diane, is we're gonna come up with a plan of recommendations that we would then pass on to the Board of Education. They're the ones that get to make the decision.
Right.
We simply are going to give our recommendations, having looked at the data, having had the conversations, hopefully having thought, outside of the box a little bit. So does that help? No, that still doesn't answer.
So this group was put together really to look at what we can do to reconfigure the district.
Well, that's what we're starting with today. There's a lot of other information. If we look at what our needs and our wants list are, there's still a lot of information, but we felt, I believe, at the last meeting, that this was, well, there was no sense of talking about how we could make changes to fine arts or what our recommendations were if we didn't know what the reconfiguration of buildings was going to be. Are we looking at, changing attendance lines? Are we looking at the possibility of closing buildings? Is that going to make difference in those program areas? So I think at the last meeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea was if we get the reconfiguration piece and the structural piece set, then the other things will come, not that they aren't important, but that we needed to start with this piece first. Right? Is that what I'm just making sure my mind is working right.
Well, what I saw was two, not just the reconfiguration, but we need to see, we saw that population on the east side is lower. We need to move students to the east side. And the two schools with the least population are on the west side, right?
Right. Okay. So there's two schools that have the least amount of population currently, if I'm correct, would be Winchester and Potter Road. So I guess the conversation is what do we do with the students in those buildings? What do we do with those buildings? Is there a possibility of movement? I mean, we are seeing lower population on the east side of town. So how do we
Well, you
bring...
have to also look at our Cheektowaga borders and the lines. Has there been conversations with other school districts? Is that going to stay the same? Like where South Cheektowaga comes in and where
Unfortunately, our borders aren't changing that way anytime soon.
No, I'm not saying.
I say get rid of them.
I'm saying, like that, as long as that's not gonna change, that we're not gonna get more kids from Cheektowaga,
Right.
that's what I'm talking about.
Right.
Brian,
But
do you-
that's all stuff we have to look at, we need to know that.
Sure.
Do we have, or can we get, for example, if we looked at a map of the district, and we're talking about, because ultimately they all end up in the high schools, they go through the middle of the high school.
Right.
So if we're saying that we need to ship 300 kids, or, the building part, that can be done various different ways, but if we looked at, the old-fashioned Union Road, are there certain neighborhoods that if we said, okay, these kids now go to, for the sake of argument, they go to West L, so if we send them to Northwood, not that they would go
Right,
there.
no, yeah,
If we take these neighborhoods, we can now
Yes.
take 300 kids from the west side of town, put the east side of town, because then the domino effect is,
Yep.
now you can go 5 through 8 on both sides of town,
Right.
do we have neighborhoods that we
Yes.
can?
Yeah. Can I just jump in? What I would say, and if it's okay with the commission and Lisa and Ed, I would highly recommend that we bring Kevin Love in for one of the meetings. Kevin has a program called TransFinder, which he'll be able to put on the screen the entire district and be able to actually call out streets, parts of a district, or parts of an attendance zone, and tell us how many kids live there and what would happen. Not only tell us how many kids, what grade level they're in, and what would happen if we moved sections or readjusted attendance zones for, whatever we thought. So I would just recommend that Kevin is the guy, and so if that's something, we can get him on an agenda.
Yeah, I'll make a phone call to Kevin and see if we can get him to come to our next meeting, so that, that we can kind of look at that and get a better idea as to, like we're saying. And I think one of the interesting things is we've always thought of Union Road as that kind of dividing line. And I think that it may be the line, instead of going down, maybe more going across to try to balance numbers a little bit more. Just if you kind of look at
North, south? Yeah.
just.
North is best, south
I
is
just want to
least.
throw this out there before we get into everything. Regarding redistricting, I was actually one of the families that was affected when they redistricted years ago. I actually went to Allendale for elementary school. I was one of 25 students who went to East, while the rest of my class went to West. And my sister as well. There's 4 girls in my family, so my sister and I both went to East, went through East. My sister, that's 2 years younger than me, was in junior high when they did the redistricting. They actually gave her the option after she was in East, if she wanted to switch over to West, to go back with her friends that she was with at Allendale, but she decided not to. So down the road now, there was 4 of us. 2 went to East, 2 went to West. So you can just imagine what went on in our house during that time. I can tell you right now, looking back, I'll never forget it. It wasn't pleasant at all. So I think that's something that we do need to look at if we do redistrict, that there are families that have kids already in the middle schools, in the high schools, and there are younger siblings coming in that now we're setting that division in there again.
That's a really good point, Sarah. Like, for instance, if and when we would do redistricting, if, for instance, you were taking kids from West L and saying that, they were going to go to Northwood or whatever it might be, and they already had, and then they were going to go to East Middle and East Senior, but they had an older sibling that was at East or at West Middle or West Senior, that's all stuff that we're going to have to figure out, talk about. And any time that you mention the R word, I mean, it's a big thing. And I think that, anytime you talk about closing a school, I mean, those are big things.
It is a big thing. Closing a school, though, like when they do with East L, it's really sad, but what was nice about it, I have a lot of friends that have kids that went to East L and are now at Clinton or at East Middle. They all went together. And that was huge for those kids because their friends were going with them.
Well, Lynette had, you're perfect because you're perfect in many ways, but Lynette's daughter and son both went to East Elementary, and her daughter went from East Elementary to Clinton. So she's actually experienced that, and I mean, maybe you can add a little bit about that.
I think it was good that they all went together, and I think, Brian, you had mentioned people chose Clinton over Northwood, maybe because Clinton was closer, but I gotta tell you, it was to keep the kids together. Parents made a conscious decision.
Right.
We didn't want the neighborhood, I live in a subdivision, we didn't want the neighborhood split up, and
Right.
so if there was a conscious decision, this group just, we tried to keep kids together.
Good.
But I mean, they all fared very well, and in looking at the numbers, but I gotta say, if you're gonna redistrict, I mean, my daughter's gonna be in West Middle next year, but for the kids who've been bounced
In East Middle.
Middle, I should say East Middle. So for the kids who've gone to Clinton, I think you have to be very careful not to move those children again.
Right.
That's a good
Yeah.
piece of information.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want those kids to.
Because it was successful,
The
but
travel.
they want, you don't want to move them again.
Yeah, Dan?
Well, I guess I'll be the cold-hearted SOB here at the table. I went to school here, Allendale Junior, and wherever you ended up, you split either went to east or west. You didn't go with all your buddies. The nice part about West Seneca is there's not this huge divide rivalry between the schools. I mean, we have it as a friendly rivalry, but it's not nasty, okay? And all the kids, and we say this consistently, they're West Seneca kids. They all play hockey together, they play soccer together. Everybody blends in this community. And I know from living here for 48 years that this district has been redistricted at least 4 times that I know. My wife did the same thing in her home, where Sherry went to east, the 3 other kids went to west. Everybody survived. All right.
Well, and like my son is he's on East, but he's in marching band.
Right.
And so, but like now there's most homes have 2 parents working. So it's also an issue of, can my neighbor put my child on the bus? Who's going to be home when my child gets off?
Now here you just hit it on the head. To me, is the kids adjust. This is the bigger adjustment for the parents who have investments in schools, who are, and it's not shot at anybody, but our PTA members who are now going to be running the school next year. It's our turn. People are invested, the parents are invested, and the kids adjust. And they all know each other, and they move around. And
I think we saw.
We're going to take the lead from the parent.
Right.
So if I know with Lynette, they looked at it as an adventure.
It was an adventure. I wasn't one of the parents that was up in arms.
And if you look at it as an adventure, and this is going to work, and life is going to go on, and it's, it's going to make it just an easy transition.
Besides,
It's the end of the
things
world. It's the end of the world for everybody.
If things keep going the way they are, we're at one high school down the line anyway, so they'll all see each other again.
And it was. I wasn't one of those parents that was up in arms. I'm like, this is what is happening, and this is life. So we're going to do it. But I just would hate for those kids to be moved again after a year.
And I think really if we're really looking at this realistically, you would really be looking at probably moving some of those west side kids over to the east side. I think the east side kids would be okay.
Which now, like when I went to east, my neighborhood that I live in now, my kids go to west. All those kids went to east when I went to school.
All off of French Road was all west kids when I was in school.
I mean, Tree Haven was east, and now it's west. So yeah.
Is there any kind of agenda that the number of students in each middle school and senior level school become more equal?
I don't think so, because they're different quantities in each school. There's different, like one middle school with East L fits a lot more than West Middle School. So I don't think there's an agenda to equal out. I think there's an agenda to use the buildings as much as possible, fill them up.
I think Brian did say, like, eventually we'd like to see
I think
equality.
equality on both sides of town would be helpful. Yeah.
But equality doesn't mean 700 at each school. Equality means proper usage of each building.
Now,
I'm here now speaking in my son's voice, who thinks that there was some grand conspiracy somewhere that to beef up the enrollment in West so they'd have more athletes.
It didn't work out so well.
Yeah.
We see what they do.
Fighting is tongue of war.
I will.
And he's out of
You benefit-
at least 21 years.
You benefit, athletics will benefit from having a smaller population because the competition is not as difficult.
Right.
If you just want to talk strict athletics, AA, single A, B, all the different levels of schools, they go by 9th through 11th grade enrollment. Every division has a minimum and maximum that keeps all the schools within 200 of each other, except for the division that West is in, which there's no maximum. So a West team will play a school that has 1,000 more kids in it. So believe me, and Brian knows this, and Charles before him, we are the smallest AA school in the state. I look at those numbers every year. Not that I hope population goes down, but if we lose 5 more kids, I'll be the greatest coach in Western New York. Because we'll be competing against schools like numbers of us. So believe me, beefing up numbers, I don't want to see population go down, but trust me, that most coaches on the west side of town will be very happy to play like schools as opposed to larger schools.
My son is still looking at the rivalry between the two schools.
Well, I think if we
Well, I'm on the parish council at Our Lady of the Sacred Heart, and they're closed. And you know what? The kids are fine.
Yes.
And it's the parents. I mean,
Right.
we had meetings with the parents, and you would not believe the parents.
Right.
I mean, and I also was there when the kids it was the last day of school, and they were anxious to meet other kids.
Right.
I mean, the eighth grade coming up had 7 boys and 1 girl, which is not healthy. And so, I mean, it's the kids that are fine, it's the parents.
Right.
And you know, you talk about kids, I had 3 kids, and 2 went to Canisius, 1 went to Niagara, Bride knows more. They fought all the time, which was the better school, so that's kids.
Yeah, no, I mean, just
That's
the entire
kids.
conversation, we're a very close-knit family.
So
And
are
we
we.
still talk about how we wish we all went to the same school.
And I think that's something, you know what, and I agree with that, and I think that that's something that the conversations I've heard, in fact, I just talked to someone a couple days ago who was part of Allendale and talked about, is still very close, he's my age, still very close to people from Allendale, whether they went to, because we had Allendale, West Junior, and all that, and talked about how we're all still very close because of being one town. I think probably what would make this issue, whatever is decided, the smooth transition is what she had said about a family. If we took into consideration, and it probably won't be many, because as you had pointed out, we're really looking at probably bringing some of the west side of town down to the east side of town.
Right.
If there's a family that has students that have gone through one side, to give them that option, similar to if you want to go to Clinton or Northwood, because when you talk about also, if you have, your son is at West Senior and now your daughter's going to be at East Middle, trying to coordinate all those different things would be difficult. So that's something that and I'm sure Brian could get that data, there probably wouldn't be a lot. So I don't think it'd be difficult for the district to say to those families,
Right.
look, we're going to transition you in,
Right.
and not force you to go to 2 separate towns.
So, I mean, I'm just gonna throw it out there though, I've got a 5th, a 4th, a 1st, and 2 1-year-old twins, and I'm at Winchester. Let's be honest, one of the things we're talking about right now is we may lose Winchester. I may have a son at West Middle and the rest of my kids at I mean, it's definitely gonna affect.
Well, that's where we have to, and would we be looking at moving those kids that are already on the west, like if we do it by streets? I've always said I live pretty close to Northwood, so I always thought every year we were risking being redistricted. Not risking, because it's fine. My husband would love it if we went to the east side, that's where he grew up. But, so like my kids are in middle school and they're gonna be going to high school. Are we looking at moving all of those kids or just the elementary?
Yeah. So I just want to jump in. There is no set agenda here. So,
Right.
so I know people keep saying, are we looking at? What we're
Right.
looking at is what does the data show us, and what do we all think needs to happen? And it could be, we can have option 1, option 2. So there isn't a set agenda. This committee is charged with the task of coming up with some options. So, yeah. So I think, I don't know if we're ready to start talking about options right now, because we're really bringing up some quality, some really great conversation. So, yeah.
No, I'm thinking, what everyone's saying, if we're taking kids from the west side, moving them to the east side, then I think we need to decide how many. And are we going to try to have our middle schools follow the same pattern? Should we be 5, 6, 7, 8 district-wide? And just, if we make a move to level everything out across the board.
I
Well-
think one of the problems is that our west mid currently, and maybe somebody has a good fix for this, but when I look at those numbers, 'cause that's a great question, Joanne, is I don't know that we could actually level the 2 middle schools out.
Well, depending on, right
With
now,
the current, with the
there's no
current,
room
with
there.
the current configuration. Do you know what I mean? If we did, a 5, 6, 7, 8 on the west side, I mean, we're
You'd have
at,
to
we're
move
at
more
max.
kids
Well,
over to the east side.
Unless
Right.
we have
If we're
trailers
moving
or
them,
something.
you have to move even more in
Right.
order to do that. So if we're talking about, let's move west side kids
Well,
to the
that's
east
what I'm
side,
saying,
can
you would
move
just
even
shift
more?
that's where the redistricting would come in, and you could actually move those kids physically to the next.
Yeah, so
So
what
that's
we,
why I'm
like
saying
you
if we
said.
get that, like you mentioned, you get that map from Kevin Love,
Yeah,
maybe
I'm saying.
there's 3 neighborhoods that move 250 kids, regardless of what elementary school they're at, moves them. And then if a decision was made that they did something, that would do something with the building, then you can figure out.
yeah, like one
whatever's
of
left.
the maps that I was looking at, and I don't know if we've all seen it or not, is if you literally took all the kids, Potters, Winchester, Clinton, Northwood, I feel like they would fit at east and the rest would fit at west. So again, that's why we're thinking more of a north-south divide as opposed to east-west divide.
Say that again.
Potters,
Say that again so I can follow that.
Potters, Winchester, Clinton, Northwood fit into East Middle. The remaining schools, which are Allendale and West L. Oh, I'm sorry. Basically, the north schools from Potters North, all the schools, to me, look like they fit in East Middle, and then Allendale and West L fit in West Middle. That's just what I was looking at when I've been doing my research.
And as far as changing them all to 5, 6, 7, 8, we all discussed that.
West L and
we
Allendale would
had
be-
in the 80s, differences on both sides of the town. We had
Right.
7, 8, 9 in one, and 6, 7, 8, right, on the other, so.
Well,
I think we all came out.
if you move elementary kids from the west side to the east side, we may not need to automatically move a whole bunch of kids from the middle school, because in a year or two, they're gonna filter up and it's gonna level itself out.
Right, and that's what Brian had said earlier in the conversation, that we're not looking at doing it right, you're looking at eventually having those sides even out.
Right, so if you moved school A onto the east side of town, and then eventually within, give it 2 to 3 years, your middle school is gonna even out. So you may, and then that's when we saw West Middle starting to have a drop, because not as dramatic, but we're seeing that drop come across in the next 5 years at West Middle, which would be, kind of even it out. So if you, what Ed was saying, if you took the elementary kids of Potter, Winchester, Clinton, and Northwood to move into East Middle, that would be the number, your math said that would be the number to kind of even out the middle school.
Yeah, then we would be able to do the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th of both buildings.
Maybe not right away,
And
though.
then it is, then.
Well, again, we're not, like, our recommendations aren't even going to go into effect for a year.
Kathy just asked if we can look at the numbers, if Kathy's comment was, can Potters in Winchester merge into Clinton and Northwood?
Oh, absolutely.
Because what the numbers showed, they had a maximum of 1,000 each.
Northwood has, wait a minute, I gotta get the right paper. Northwood has some space.
Either building, completely, whether it's Winchester or Potters, could completely, that entire building could go into Northwood.
But if you take both of those buildings, won't we then be the same spot? Now, east will be way over.
Yeah, I don't think you can take.
No, you would have to take some from Potter students and move them to West
Allendale
L.
only has 400 kids.
Right.
Yeah. So
some
Joe brings
Potters
up a very
kids are
good
gonna
point.
have to go
Right.
into Allendale, and they're gonna balance your
Yeah.
four
Right.
elementaries out.
Right.
Because Clinton's already big and West L's already
Right.
big.
Right.
So
Yeah,
Potter,
you can dump one building into.
and I think that's.
Especially if the
we
district
need to
offices are
keep
gone.
that on the table too, the parking issue. That would be like, if we look at a pro and a con to moving some of the kids, parking would be definitely an
You also
issue.
have to look at travel issue too, busing. I mean, they
Okay.
take the kids from Covington Gardens and ship them all the way over to Clinton Street. Potter's Road is not doable.
No, but they can go to Allendale.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Potter's would have to merge into West or Allendale.
That's why I go back to Brian's suggestion about bringing in Kevin to look at.
Yeah.
Right.
Because I think the neighborhoods part is the issue to
But
get us
if you
to
looked at
numbers.
Winchester, you might be able to take Winchester and fit the whole building, so you're not breaking that building up. You know what I mean? Like Lynette said, worked for East Elementary, and pop them into, and I mean, I know this sounds really simple, and I'm not trying to be, I'm just trying to stay focused on what we're doing. This isn't, you know, but if we took the Winchester kids and popped them into Northwood, that would bring Northwood, because right now, remember, their capacity is really low. Or not their capacity, what they currently have. So that would, their enrollment would go up, you would be able to keep the building together. And then Potters, that's another story. We may have to, and that's about the neighborhoods where Kevin Love would come in, if we needed to look at some of the neighborhoods, possibly maybe going to Allendale, because Allendale's numbers are low. Westell, we know we have room here, we could kick out the district office. I don't know where we're putting you, but we could kick you out. Put them in Winchester. Put them in Winchester.
Then it does spots. If you just spots.
They could go visit Joe, to be physically with Joe.
Joe doesn't want them.
Yes. Joe would be very Catholic, so our company.
Is that Ebenezer? District office?
But definitely, you know, if we start to
We're
bring
looking at
some
all those
of
possibilities
those
right
there,
now, so.
And they're physical, you know, and we're brainstorming, nothing. But I think it's important that we start looking at those numbers, and when you see these numbers, it makes sense that some of those buildings can absorb. If we looked at Winchester, at the possibility of putting the district office there and housing pre-K there. If that's a nice sized building at Winchester.
What was this?
Holly had said if we move the district office to Winchester and then include in there our pre-K kids. That was another, I'm looking at the options.
Well, there has been some discussions on safety and security about moving the district offices out of the educational setting, because we do have hostile parents showing up here,
Correct.
hostile kids for superintendent's meetings.
Correct. As the wife of the superintendent, I think about that every day.
You know, and to,
So-
I don't know, I think a goal or my recommendation, putting on the chief's hat now,
Yeah.
is to keep district offices separate from any educational setting.
My son hasn't been in this building in many years, but as a parent that had a student in
Like-
this building, I can tell you honestly, I can't think of a parent that would be happier to kick district office out
So-
of here.
So what we would,
You know,
Well-
because it just that.
what we would look at would be option A, maybe Ebenezer building for the district office.
Right.
Option B, maybe Winchester literally is split. Classrooms are pre-K, the other sections district offices. I mean, the building can easily be barricaded right there at the entranceway. So that's why we need to come up with different options and let the board decide what works for them.
Yeah, we
You have to look at parking at the end.
Yeah.
We have to remember, like you said,
That's true, Ebenezer has no
we can't
parking.
rehab these buildings, though. We have to make sure
We can
pay
get parking
attention
there.
to that.
At Ebenezer.
I said we have to pay attention to, like, the whole reason we're doing this
We
is to
do
be
own more property
fiscally
out back.
responsible. So we don't want half-used buildings everywhere. Now you're gonna have 3 buildings, potentially Potter, Winchester, and Ebenezer, that are owned by the district, that has to pay heating costs and running water and all that stuff. Like, we're doing this for a reason. We're moving these kids for a reason. Let's do it.
Oh, and don't forget about continuing ed. They need a home too sometimes. Winchester could be.
Aren't they?
Well,
They're East now. They're East.
I'm saying.
The office.
You know.
In defense of the administration office, there was a year when there was no electricity, and we are out there in the hall with flashlights every 30 minutes.
No, I know. I'm just saying. It's not not the district office, both.
It's the people
other
coming in.
issues. It's crazy. Yeah. Just to let you know too, because I did look back at this, because I'm very concerned about Allendale's roof. When we were having those torrential rains, I was very worried. But Potter's Road, their roof is 24 years old. Just to throw that in, and when we're talking about $1 million to put on a new roof, which like really makes me very nervous. I am. The roofs, Joe, they're bothering me. I don't know how you do
Just
it.
here with the umbrella, the window.
But anyway, that your windows do.
You're gonna see yourself on the roof soon, trying to fix it yourself.
So I mean that's an option too. Winchester, I mean, has had a lot of updates, including their roof. The roof is only 9 years old, so getting really wet.
Hey Lisa, how do we get to the point where we get 8-10 options up there and then we'll work on them? I mean,
I think that we're in that process of where, I mean, I think this would be like an option of getting the kids to the right middle schools at least. You know, that would even out your middle schools. Then I think there'd be another option of Winchester kids going to Northwood. I think that would be an option. I think there'd be an option for Winchester becoming the district office. I think there would be an option, I heard, with the district office going over to your building. I mean, I think those are all options, and I think as we start to write those, I think, and then we could look at them and say, this isn't the best option. This option has a little bit more validity. So maybe that's, okay, so let's keep going. So if we took Winchester kids to Northwood, they would fit in Northwood, correct?
Yeah, and here's the Northwood slide.
Okay.
So if you added, right now there's 280 students. And remember, if they shifted, then you'd have some kids going to East Middle right away. So actually the 280 would be less going.
Be about 225.
The thing is too, is if we can even out the middle schools, we're gonna even out the high schools. I mean, I look at the difference between East Senior and West Senior. We're talking 300 to 400 kids. That's huge. That's huge. Okay, so Winchester to Northwood. How about Winchester to the district office?
With their little tiny toilets.
Like the tiny toilet there. Or the district office to Winchester, rather, sorry.
Their little toilets at every room. I've been visiting them.
The district office to the Ebenezer building.
And Potter being split, right, between.
Yes.
if you pull district office out of here, you almost have enough room for Potter to fit right here. Or take that building and, maybe make it a K4. Yeah,
Or
K5,
K2.
exactly,
We did. We talked about the front building, about Allendale being Allendale becoming a K2 building. And then this back building becoming
3.5.
3.5.
How many is the
Yeah.
And that would be moving Potters into this. But that's not.
That's not putting Potter, any
That's not
Potter kids
achieving-
into East.
Yeah, it's not achieving move.
So you're not
I think you
achieving
said look
your.
at Potter's difference, because we're kind of spread out. We have the whole section by the 400, that's Potter's.
Right.
You have the whole section next to Potter's, that's ours
Right.
too. They're not near each other, so
And
two distinct neighborhoods.
we could also do part of Potter's to Northwood, because then that would even out the middle schools, so that would be another option. So part of Potter's to
Yeah, this
to
campus.
Northwood.
Oh,
to
yeah.
Northwood,
Yeah.
so that we evened out the middle schools. Okay, any other suggestions?
Potter's to here.
We did, yeah. gotta look at the numbers
Yes.
in the current configuration, yeah.
Part of Potters.
Part of Potter's here.
Yeah.
So part of Potter's Northwood, part of Potter's is
Here,
here.
the district office gets out of here.
Yeah, or to Allendale, this campus.
I think this committee all agrees that the district office has got to leave here. I don't think that's something that anyone's arguing.
With what?
The district office has got to get out of here.
I think it becomes, as Dan said, I think really it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
So do you want me to put part of Potter's? I'll have to change it in case I need to refill it. I'll tell Lisa too.
I think the other thing that we need to start thinking about too is, do we try to do this, whatever decision we make, recommendation we make, we're not the decision makers, but whatever recommendation we make, do we recommend that this is like a mass switcheroo? Like like starting the beginning of school year A, obviously not this school year, but you know what I'm saying, that we do a mass switch? Or do
Yes.
Joe, I agree with you.
If there is anything that I learned from what happened with East L and the ALC, and I don't fault the district, because I think they were looking into ideas and it got out, and then they did the best that they could, from my opinion, best they could to get everybody, the information. But it became, well, what about maybe this? Let's just do it. Here's what the plan is, whether it's over a year, 2, 3 years. Here's how it's going to go. Here's what the options are. Get it out to everybody.
Yeah,
and
I
just
agree.
do it.
I agree with that, putting out a multi-year plan, but I don't necessarily think closing 2 buildings in 1 year might be the best thing. It might be a staggered closure.
My point is, whatever the plan is, we don't say, well, if we think the best thing is to close the building and redistrict, for example, then it's part of the plan. Not,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
let's just only do this.
And get it
now.
all out there.
Because Diane brought up a great point of, with all the new houses going up on the west side of town, although the numbers show things going down, we have to take that into consideration. As we're shifting, we may have to shift a few more from the east, or to the east side, in anticipation of those numbers. So let's do it.
Growth that's going to come from the west side. In 5 years, it's going to come from the west side. It's not going to come from the east side. So we have to, if we're really looking at all the data and planning, then I think it would be, we would be responsible enough to move on that.
I agree with you. I think to do tiny steps, and I'm not a person that likes to be drastic. However, I think to do tiny steps isn't going to do anybody any favors. We're going to be better off to be bold, make a bold move, with the idea that we don't have to come back and revisit it in 2 years and say,
this is happening across Western New York.
yes,
This is not unique
If
to.
you
Look at
look
what
at
those-
Kenmore, if you look at other,
Right.
unfortunately, it's across the state of New York.
It is.
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
Seeing your Winchester, I'm getting the sense that people who attend Winchester already have this kind of in the back of their mind that this is coming.
Oh, I'm told every minute I walk into any store in Western New York, like, did you know Winchester's closing?
And it's
And
been
that's
like
what I'm
that for
saying.
years.
This is why, what I'm saying is this wouldn't be a shock to anybody's system if you said, boom, we're closing Winchester, these kids are going somewhere else.
No,
Not as much
I
as
like
it
the
was
idea of
for
releasing the
East,
plan.
Where that one kind of cut some people
You
off
thought
guard.
Winchester was closed.
Well, yeah.
I went to my grandma's
I thought the meeting
house
part of it was
before
going to be
next
Winchester's
year.
closing, so.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I think whatever we put out there should be a comprehensive plan, say this is our 5-year plan. I think it looks more reputable that way too. I think it's a great thing, that's up to the school board to decide, but not, saying, oh, we're doing this year and then not saying anything and then a year later, it looks like there's too much, there's no plan. But part of it is we have to come up with these recommendations so the school board and Crawford and all them, Dr. Crawford can put a plan together to get New York State with this audit and everything we got going on. They want a plan, so.
Yeah, but my question, I guess, is it wouldn't really be a shock to anybody who has kids that are enrolled there.
No.
No.
Not at all.
And after.
It would be a happy moment.
Would it be sad? Absolutely. I mean, there's a part of it that is sad. I'm sure, Holly, as you're sitting here and we're if we have Potters up here.
Just assemble the whole thing.
No, I mean, it's very hard. Here we have a teacher and a principal from Potter Road, and you know, we have parents here from Winchester, and you're just, you know, Diane doesn't have children there anymore, but has invested her life over there, and we're just, you know, throwing stuff up there. So, you know, and I don't think anybody is trying to do anything. As we're listing things, I don't, and it's just like flowing out. No one is trying to be not sensitive, or
you know, as a parent in the district, you know, and I was a teacher at Allendale, I'm a principal at Potters, I have a child at Clinton, I have a child at East Middle, I have a child at East Senior. I have an investment in a lot of buildings in this district, but what I have the bigger investment in is my own children. And so for me, it's about quality of services. You know, and as a principal, I know that as my building gets smaller, you know, Winchester and I are always scrambling, trying to like, well, who's going to come to our building on this day? Because we need like a part-time teacher for this and a part-time teacher for that. You can't really put the program together that you want when it's like, well, she can only come for this hour because I'm sharing her with 3 other buildings because we don't need the level of staff, and then they're spread so thin, all the teachers, you know, and if we're all together and the teachers are together, you can put better schedules together, you can provide better services, the teachers then become part of our communities again, instead of we have some teachers that are in 4 different elementary buildings.
And I think the bottom line of when we do all of this,
Yeah.
all these ideas we're putting up there, at the end of the day, we need to be able to say, without reservation, that we are servicing our students better.
Yeah.
Whether it's, because I see the same thing that you see, that if we could have, if you have more teachers in a building, will it lead to smaller class size? Will it lead to more offerings? Will it lead to teachers not traveling between 4 and 5 different buildings? Will the sense of community, all those things? There is a fiscal part that's a reality, but at the end of the day, we need to be able to say that this is going to benefit our students better. They're going to be in a better situation. Yes, it'll be very sad. I mean, Winchester's it's a great building. Our last community school, you know, that if that's what occurs, it's going to be a heartbreaking thing. But as difficult as that would be to say, I would be able to say it better if knowing those kids and the kids across the district are going to be better served. And our teachers are going to be able to and staff, all staff are going to be able to better serve because we have less part of the map to go through. So I think that's the best selling point of this whole thing.
And I think we have to remember, it's still the west side of the district. You know, we were
Correct.
talking before, as far as,
Correct.
you're saying people leave Potters and leave Northwood because they're moving into the bigger homes that are being built on the west side. They're still staying in West Seneca. You might not be able to
Correct.
find that bigger home in your same building district, but they're staying in the West Seneca district. They're not going to Orchard Park, they're not going to Williamsville, they're staying here. So whether you're getting moved from one building to another, you're still part of the same district.
Or whether you're being moved from west to east, you're still part of West Seneca, right?
Yeah. I think one of the things, just to piggyback on what Joe was saying, Lauren had brought up, I think it was maybe the last meeting or meeting before, a colleague of hers that was traveling to multiple buildings and how stressful that was for her. And it really fits with what Holly was saying of, you know, when we look at the programming piece and the scheduling piece, that would be putting a better program, a better schedule together for both our students and our staff if we have more students to service. And, you know, within reason. I mean, we don't want to get crazy and putting, you know, thousands of kids in one building, but we could even some things out.
I think that if we market what Holly said and Joe said, then parents will
Correct.
understand, because that's what the Catholic schools are doing.
And I think we can use that too, Joan, what the Catholic, I mean, that's another, you know, we see it in Kenmore, we see it in the Catholic schools. Unfortunately, people are downsizing. I mean, that's what they have to do to stay afloat.
What they both said would be a great market.
Absolutely, and I think that's part of what we need to do as a group is to, whatever recommendations come out of here, we need to make it a positive spin for our children of the community is really what we need to do. Bob?
Whatever we do, we have to be mindful of the culture of each building.
Correct.
And how that would mesh and leadership personalities and however that would change.
Bingo, Bob.
Well, and that's what I was gonna talk about, because, you know, when we went from East to Clinton, my daughter, my son had stayed because he was moving to East Middle. In my head, I knew it was right, but it is sad, you know, heart-wise. But it's hard not to compare. And academically, everything was the same, but musically, it wasn't. And so I went from a school where, you know, the teacher was there all the time to now the teacher in Clinton is between all these schools. And it's not his fault, he's a great teacher, but he's spread so far out. And so it's so culture-wise, that's a huge thing, because you're coming from one school to the other and you're used to a certain culture, and then you get to this other school and you're like, well, you know, wait a minute, why isn't my daughter picking up music up until after Halloween? You know what I mean? Like that type of thing, and it's not his fault because he's so spread. But I think we need to look at those teachers who have to travel between all these schools. And when you do close a school, the culture of the school. And, you know, the other big thing was when we would do events, it was the whole school. Well, because of parking, it's split up. I talked about that before. So, like, I think you have to look at that.
I think the parking piece too is something that we can recommend or address that, you know, has to, if indeed any of these decisions are put into recommendations for the Board of Education, it needs to have a little tag on it, help, we need more parking, you know.
We have enough green space, so maybe we can.
In
turn some of
Northwood,
that
we
into
certainly have
one.
enough green space. I mean,
If we're working towards equalizing our buildings, equalizing our district from side to side, north to south, however we figure this out, we also are creating the opportunity for the culture in each building to be equal. We are giving us, we're opening the door to create that, to have fewer teachers moving from, you know, jackrabbit to jackrabbit, because we've become more responsive.
And you have to be mindful.
Right.
Well, I remember when East was closing, a lot of parents that we had talked to, they were well aware of what East Elementary did and what Clinton Street didn't do at the time. And that was an issue for a lot of those parents. And my understanding is Clinton is great, and they really worked
They did
at.
great, but
yeah.
I did notice, because my son had gone through the music program at East El, there was
Right.
a different, and that was because the teacher is moving all over the
Right.
place. So maybe it was a solidified.
Right.
And I also think it's important that the school that is welcoming the families in welcomes them.
Right, and that's what I was gonna say, is we have to be mindful, like Winchester families or Potter Road families, they're used to different, you hear things, even though we're one district, we know that. We're, you know, and when our kids all play sports and stuff together, but you also hear, oh, your school doesn't do that, we do this, or, what, you do that, we don't do
like
that.
the cool Halloween thing that Winchester does. I mean, that's like super cool.
Yeah.
So then those parents
Yeah,
can
like-
take that into wherever they go.
But, right, you're right, and I think
Utilize
we
your
have to
parents.
make sure that when they're transitioning, we help them transition with that, and that the district is mindful, like, of bringing those programs across the district.
I think too, if we have an opportunity to lay out the plan, is, you know, as I've heard many of you say, you know, to actually have a plan, that the plan doesn't get switched, that it's a solid plan that's going out, and then with that, have a lot of support within that program. For instance, you know, pulling into the DPC and into your PTAs and your PTOs and your staff and so forth to make that transition for whatever, you know, whatever we might come up with, to make that transition that much easier for everyone.
Yeah, the district definitely has to utilize whatever plan comes about. They definitely have to utilize their
I
resources.
think the other thing that might be helpful as we start to look at some of that stuff too is by the possibility of closing a specific building, what's the financial piece on that? You know, so if we did close, I'm gonna use Potter Road again, if we did close Potter Road, what would we as a district save by closing that building? We would have the opportunity to move the staff, you know, and the children to other locations. But just by that building not being heated and being lit and
Grass mowed.
Yeah, you know, all those kinds of things.
When we talked about businesses, needing more businesses.
Yeah.
Palladino's a business, right? So now you're talking about more tax base for the town.
Right.
Right. I just have to say, the transparency is what really, and like you said, everything has to be put on the table, everything. Whether it's gonna be, like you said, 5-year plan, 3-year plan, whatever the case may be. But I do have to say that the fact of and I think the parents will hear this as a good thing. You're not just touching the children, you're also going to move the administration offices to a safer place for the children, but you're also moving them. They're not, you know, not the untouchables.
They're not immune.
They're not the untouchables.
Correct,
okay?
and we can't forget them.
And-
We need to be sensitive to that issue also.
Yeah.
I don't know how sensitive you have to be because they're working for the district.
Right, but still.
But we also have to, I'm very adaptable, can you tell? But the only thing I'm concerned about is with the move, we have to consider the cost of moving district offices.
Physical offices.
It's just the technology alone is gonna be,
Right. Well, that's one of the things, if you remember, when we visited Ebenezer, and we learned how much it would cost to move the big computer station thing. It was like $1 million.
For what?
What's it called?
There's $1 million worth of
Server
wiring
room.
in the server room at
would
Ebenezer.
cost $1 million to move. That's in Ebenezer.
Minimum.
Oh.
Yeah.
You can't figure that out, Brian?
Actually, I would need Scott's help on that.
Yeah, $1 million. Just
You can't,
to
is that
move
just
them.
one big building pole and all
Yeah.
that?
I thought he said 2 million.
Like the movie Airplane.
I thought he said 2 million,
Right.
and
2 million.
that room was
Yes.
Well, I think there's,
awe-inspiring. I don't know how else to put it.
I think there's $1 million worth of equipment there in order to move that $1 million worth of equipment.
It was right, yeah.
It was crazy.
Um,
Bob, and then I'll get you, Amy.
okay.
As part of this piece, there's gonna be a lot of teachers' lives interrupted. We have no input into that. But I think part of our recommendation should involve some thought process that we might have, or maybe we don't have, about the teacher alignment. You know, will the whole thing be up for bidding? You know, I don't know how the.
I think that's pretty set in stone.
I feel with that, I don't want to speak for the district, but I can tell you that we learned a lot of lessons from when East L happened, and I believe that the association and the district worked together to come up with language that would make another transition like this much smoother.
Okay, good.
And I think that language that was previously in the contract didn't anticipate something like this. Since we lived through it and we saw this coming, you know, within the next 5, 6, 7 years, I think we'll be in a better situation. Again, nobody wants to see a building closed, no one wants to see people move, but I think also with what happened at East L, although there are some differences in things, once the fear was done and school started going, everyone kind of settled in and said, okay, we can do this. So I think we're in a much better situation.
Well, that's good to know too.
I think it depends on how it's presented as well.
Well, I think that's an important piece. I mean,
PR has to be there.
thorough, and we need to present it and give parents enough notice to absorb it and to process it and to know what's coming.
You know, with that, if I can just throw this in, one of the things that I would recommend, whatever this procedure is going to be, if it's this committee is going to present to Dr. Crawford presents to the board makes the decision. I think whatever presentation is made to the community, they need to know they don't have a say in what's going to happen.
I agree.
Or if it's going to say it, because one of the things that happened was after the first meeting with the community, people left there thinking that they had a say in what the outcome was going to be.
Right.
And then when they realized that they didn't, that's what became contentious. I think if the community is made aware that this function of this commission and Dr. Crawford and administration make the recommendation, the school board is going to do this, so the presentation is not if it's going to happen, but when it happens. So the options to you parents are, how can we make this a soft landing, not whether or not it's going to occur. And things like had been mentioned about, would it be an option that if you have a family member that's already on one side of town with this redistricting, you'll have the option of keeping them both or whatever.
Right.
But I think that that's an important thing, because that was the biggest thing that I saw. People thought they had a say and they didn't.
Plus, I don't remember any conversation as to who was on any committee when they closed East. I think the community
Well, I don't
needs
think
to
there
know
was.
that this committee,
I was just gonna
a
say-
very wide, diverse group of people sat down and did this.
In Kenton, that's very kind.
I did not say that.
In Kenton,
They talk about
the
it.
public knew that there was committees meeting to come up with plans for consolidation. And it was very transparent. And I think maybe that's something we need to look at.
Well, I have to tell you, I mean, we're on YouTube, we're
Right.
on,
But,
we've
but
got a
I'm not
website.
allowed,
and-
if you're not into if you're not big into parent groups and stuff, like we are, you're not gonna pay
Maybe
attention.
one of
And
the
I'm not
things,
saying they don't
I think that's a
deserve-
good, I think that's a good point, because one of the things is we do wanna stay transparent. The last thing, you know, I mean, the people around this table have put a lot of hours into this committee already. One of the things that maybe we could look at is sending out, a district-wide email.
You know, or just a press release. We don't have to have like, we don't have to open this up, and that's not what I'm saying, but
Well,
But even just
and-
let them know that,
The meetings are open to the public.
Don't we
I
send
know,
those emails
but
out?
unless if I was part of this committee and I still didn't know what it was about in the beginning, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, I'm just
Well,
saying, like,
and I know Brian's emailed the entire district about it.
but
But
they don't know what we're doing.
We could do a press release.
I definitely think now, if this is really how we're moving, I think it would be,
well, I guess
Our
that's,
benefit.
I think that's an important thing. Is this group comfortable with the direction that we're moving?
I don't think we can really say that yet, because we haven't looked at every avenue, every option. I don't think that we can go out and say, we're looking at closing a building when we're not really sure if that's what we're looking at yet.
And I don't
Because
think we want to do that.
Well, I agree with you. I don't think we have enough information on what the program benefit is and what the financial benefit is.
So
Those
let's
two
make a
things are.
list, let's make a list of what information we still need in order to
And I also, well, you're gonna make that list, I'm also gonna throw this out there. Let's not forget, we're not making the decision. We're making the recommendation of the school board. My opinion, it's up to them if they wanna hold open meetings and discussions about it. We're just making a
I
recommendation.
know that, but I'm just saying, in Kenton, they met over several weeks or months, and it's not that everybody knew what they were talking about, they just knew that there was a committee formed to discuss consolidation. And I just think that would be a fair thing to do, once we know if that's the way we're moving, I guess. Not saying if we're gonna decide to keep open these schools and look at something else, that's fine too.
So I
but-
think that's fair. I think that's a very fair thing. So I guess my question to you as committee members, commission members, are what is we're brainstorming. We certainly haven't formed any conclusions, obviously. What other pieces of information we're going to ask Kevin Love to come in and talk to us so we can see those neighborhood pockets, I think, which is
We
important.
need to know fiscally what are we
Savings.
looking at, what are we
The impact
saving?
of closing, you need to know the savings of closing the building, but you also need to know this versus the cost of moving the children and the cost of moving the administration offices.
And then,
So the cost of, let me just make sure I get this right. So we want the cost of moving administration offices and student/staff, because obviously we'll need desks, physical desks
Got a
and
retro
And then
equipment and stuff
Kevin
like
might
that.
be able to give you a better idea on the cost, if there's gonna be cost savings on the transportation end as well.
I can just jump in, there will be, and there was this year. We definitely got more state aid for transportation because we closed East Elementary and we had to travel students to Clinton. It increased our state aid and transportation.
Oh,
Yeah.
and Brian, is there, Joe and I were talking like in the beginning of the meeting, we both kind of remember, if you sell a building, does the state get a portion?
Yes, we will owe the state money, yeah. They'll get part of the profit and the district will get some part of the profit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're not gonna get, we're not gonna be rolling in the dough by selling the building.
Well, it depends what we can get from them.
Okay, Diane's gonna be the negotiator.
Bob has a sign in his car.
What we need to realize also is what are we gonna be saving by not operating a building? And then we need to look long range down the pike, what would that building need in the next even like maybe 5 years of, will it need the roof? Will it need windows that don't leak? Will it, what else would we be needing to look at in the next 5 years in that particular building? That might be helpful.
Yeah, like if we're gonna make one building strictly preschool or something, then you need tiny toilets in there.
Right,
like
right.
Winchester.
Lisa, I don't think we're ready to go to the press.
No, I agree with you.
If we ever go to the press, we're gonna get press people here. We're gonna get press people here.
Right, and we still need open dialogue.
And we need open dialogue, but we really haven't made any decisions.
No, what I'm asking
That's
you
when
is,
you want to, that's when you
right.
want to get the press here.
What I'm asking is what other
I think I'd stay
information,
away if we had the press here.
just
really.
what people need. That's we're nowhere near at that point. We have to have come up with some.
But to be
more
fair,
definite-
if you call Kevin Love tomorrow and you say to him, well, not tomorrow because he's probably off tomorrow because it's Friday, but anyway, if you call him and say, what are our cost savings going to be if we switch some stuff around? He's going to say, what? Don't we need to have like the paper that she flipped? Like we have like scenario A, scenario B, and then he could say, well, in scenario A we would save $20, and in
Right.
scenario B we'd save $25. And you know what I'm saying? So I feel like right now we're saying, what do we need? But we really don't even have. I don't know. And then my other question was a few minutes ago, how committed are we to staying like that this building remains an elementary, that West Middle remains a middle? Like, is there any talk of, does this have to be an elementary?
No, I think we're okay.
Could this be a middle?
We
To just
talked
be-
about possibly.
I'm sorry, maybe I stepped out.
No,
I'm sorry.
that's okay. At one point, we had talked about this becoming, the possibility, someone had suggested, of this being West Middle. I think one of the things.
Which we did not write down.
Which we did not write down.
That's what I'm saying, like, and nothing against you, Danielle, but I think we need like more, we need like a, you know, we need to say, do we want to come up with 3 scenarios of change? And then let Mr. Love work on each of those scenarios, and Joe work on each of those scenarios as far as cost cutting, as far as utilities, and busing, and
Brian, is there
staff
been any-
costs.
Has there been any discussion, like, within the district administration already about knowing savings? I mean, to be honest.
No,
like-
no, we do not have a workup of scenarios with savings attached to them at all. But
But do
if
you
this-
have a workup of, can I ask you that? I mean, not that you'll tell me, but
No.
do you have, has the district talked about a scenario that they would like?
No. It's really, it hinges on this group.
And
So-
because the other piece too is, Mr. Love could say, we're gonna save this if we move all the Winchester kids to Northwood, let's say. But then, what if we decide to give a choice? So Corey's older girls are at West Middle, and her son now is leaving Winchester. He's not necessarily going to Northwood, because maybe the timing is right that he's actually done it when he's finished up at Winchester, but now he's going to East Middle. So now is she given a choice? So now does she have 3 of her children going to West and 1 going to East? And then are we losing some of our savings by sending 2 buses into neighborhoods?
Right.
Like Lynette said, we made a conscious decision as parents to send all of our kids to Clinton to keep them together. But what if her next door neighbor had said, I'm not going with that. I want my child to go to Northwood. Now there's 2 school buses going in onto her street to pick up her children out of Clinton, and somebody else is right next to her kids to go to. So I think, you know, that this is all things that have to be considered with the cost savings, because that obviously that's going to increase our savings. Like we're going to lose our savings.
Right.
It may or may not. So what I just said earlier is that we actually received more state aid in transportation because we're transporting kids from East Elementary to Clinton. So if in your scenario, we would still get more state aid. The key piece is, I think someone referred to ripping the Band-Aid off.
Okay.
So I think, going back to that chart, if it's okay with this committee, I'd like to tell Kevin Love to come here at the next meeting and be able to present some information related to that piece of paper where we've already collected some information.
Okay.
Potters, I think it says Potters going to, or Winchester going to Northwood, some of Potters going to Northwood, some of Potters coming down here. And keep in mind
And
that.
West Middle becoming a middle school.
Yeah, and we can look at all those things. But I think for Kevin, those 3 things that I just said would be plenty to show us, for the next meeting. Is that okay? And are we?
I think that's great.
Are we thinking about some dates for the next meeting?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think that with the findings from the audit committee is that we are accelerating our timetable. So if you think about it, we were meeting about once a month. And I know we had discussion at the last meeting, being that it's summertime, once a month would be okay. But I think that we're gonna need maybe to increase our meeting times, at least through the summer, to get to, through September, so that during part of September, we can really start to write the plan so that we, the plan and the recommendations, so that we're prepared in the beginning of October to present to, and I will get in touch with Dr. Crawford to ask him what his thought is as far as, will we present to Dr. Crawford in Central Office Administration? Will we be presenting to Dr. Crawford in the Board of Education? I'm not sure. But I will clarify that with him and ask him what his thought is. Will we be doing that in a private meeting? Will we be doing that at a Board of Education meeting? I'll get the logistics of that piece that might be helpful for us too. But that gives us about 2 months to really get this piece kind of settled, and then from there, in my vision, we can then move on to, we have lists of other things that we're still looking at, and as we talked about, this was the first thing we were going to tackle, the reconfiguration, and then from there, the rest of the stuff we wanted to go back to. It's important, but this was the first piece.
Yeah, so once we have this established, we can start looking at the music programs, the football programs, the
But we
swimming
need to
programs.
find out if we make X changes, will it save us money and how much? And then do we just reduce the taxes or put it in programs, or? We have to find out how much
Do you want me to
potentially
see
we
if,
might have in savings.
depending on the dates that Lisa suggests, besides having Kevin do a presentation, are we ready to hear from Brian Schultz and Jan Lewandowski to hear some savings?
I think that maybe at the,
part of it.
I think maybe at
So
the
in a
next meeting.
couple meetings? Or?
Yeah, let's target Kevin Love at the next meeting, and then at the following meeting, let's target Jan Lewandowski and Brian Schultz to give, and that way too, if at the next meeting, this gives you time to go home and kind of process. And also, thinking about all of the scenarios that we made, if you can come up with any concerns that, the district office is going to Winchester, what would be the concerns of that? Is it parking? Is it tiny toilets? What's the concern? And as we're putting those together, then we can address them. But that might be helpful to what other areas we need to address. So when Sarah gets me, because she's really good about getting me the minutes and everything, what I'll do, instead of waiting to send them out prior to just before the meeting, I will get them out to you ASAP so that you can go back over it and revisit it a little bit. Okay, so I've got some dates that were available for using the district office. So it would be July 24th, July 31st, August 21st. We had originally scheduled August 7th, but that will not work, and September 4th. So I tried to look ahead, getting us into September. So what I'm thinking, yes, I'm sorry, July 24th, July 31st, August 21st, and September 4th. So what I'm thinking is we go ahead, schedule those meetings. I know summer is very difficult and people have vacations and we have babies coming and all kinds of exciting things. But what we can try to do is as many people as could be here. That would be awesome. And then what I'll just continue to do is be sending out emails with information on them so that if you're not able to be here, you can still be in the loop with Sarah taking her copious notes. It's like you're here, even though you're not.
Keep in mind, if you can't attend the meeting, just go watch it.
Yeah.
And then you can make notes and email too if you have questions about what's going on. You can also live Skype in anytime you want. We can set that up.
Joe?
I just want to say real quickly, the fiscal part's very important, but can we also address if we're going to make programs better,
Yes.
class sizes, resources. Again, at the end of the day, whatever we talk about, we can't forget that. The fiscal part
Programs,
is
class
part of
sizes.
it, but whatever it is, and I'm just throwing those things out there, but whatever it is, if it's not gonna better serve our students,
Right.
and we're gonna save a couple $100,000 at the end of the day,
Right.
maybe I won't be popular saying it, but I don't care.
Right.
It's not worth it.
I think the other thing too that's important to add to your list, which I love, was the safety issue. Because I think in this
All those
particular
things that are for
building,
the students.
that safety issue is, if you had, I mean, you did have children here, but for this particular building, I can guarantee you that would be, Amy, am I correct in saying, Sarah, Danielle, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. It is. Oh, it is. Definitely.
Okay.
Same time, 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, yeah.
So the next meeting is July 24th?
Yes. July 24th, and I'll email this out tomorrow so that everybody has the schedule right away. But July 24th, July 31st, August 21st, and September 4th. And again, I understand that everyone is really, summer's difficult, but I think if we're kind of on a roll, and I think we need to be on a roll to get this
The
kind of
other
figured out.
the other issue is we got to get it done, so we're not all of a sudden in May saying, oh, by the way, 2 schools are closing. But we need to get it out there so the school board can make their decision to get the parents notified, and I mean, make it a lot. Those East people went through. I mean,
And I think that we need to remember too that we're still in a work in progress. I don't think that we have, at this particular point, I want to clarify, we have not made the recommendation that any buildings are closing. We have not made a recommendation that any redistricting is happening. Right now, we are fact-finding on what we have brainstormed, but we have not made that decision. And I think I'm going to just kind of take chairperson's floor for a minute and just say, this is a hot topic when you start talking redistricting and school closings. And I think we need to be cautious of how we go back out into the community with this information. Because right now we are fact-finding. And I think what we don't want to do is set the ball on fire and get people all riled and the pot stirred without having all our ducks in a row. So I would recommend that we tend to keep that information because we are fact-finding to ourselves when we are ready to put out a press release that we have come to, that we are working on this a little bit more. I think at this point we're not quite at that stage. But I think we need to be cautious about how we go back out, whether it's to our neighbors, to our fellow staff members, to whoever it might be, and start saying, well, this is what we're doing. Because I don't believe that we're at that point yet.
But this video is available on the
It is,
website for
yeah.
anybody to see, right?
It is, but I don't think that we're at that point yet. Okay, thank you very much for coming this evening, and I'll see you on July 24th.
Thank you. That's it.